The Amber Road Dream, an unhurried journey along the old amber road from the Baltic shore to Rome, following a quiet traveler named Mila, who carries a small lantern, a journal, and a pouch of honey-colored stones. The year is somewhere in the first centuries of our era, but time moves slowly like breath. Chapter 1: Shore of Quiet Light. At the edge of the northern sea, waves came in with a low, even hush, as if the water were practicing how to breathe. On the dark sand, bits of amber lay soft as butter in the last light, each piece holding a memory of the sun. Mila walked the tide line with small steps, the way one walks in a place that asks to be listened to. She wore a simple wool cloak against the salt wind and carried a leather pouch at her side. Inside lay a handful of amber, warm to the touch, though the air was cool. When she lifted one to her ear, it felt as though the stone remembered summer. Old Oleg, who kept a smokehouse near the dunes, had given her a lantern with horn windows, its flame the color of honey. "The road's open for a light that doesn't shout," he'd said. "Carry this, and the wind will know you." The wind knew her. It combed the grasses on the dunes, drew lines in the sand, and slipped like a patient river through the reeds. Gulls swung slowly above, white as stitched sails. In the far distance, a line of pine trees stood like quiet listeners. Mila walked until the sun, round and mild, sat on the horizon. She stopped to watch it rest there, orange, then apricot, then the softest gold. The lantern felt warm in her hand. She lit it, and the horn windows glowed. The sea gathered itself and let go, gathered and let go. She sat on driftwood and opened her journal. When the quill touched the page, the words came as steadily as the waves. "I am not in a hurry. The road will keep. Tonight there is only the shore, the lantern, and the breath of the water." She leaned back against the log and listened until the sound and the dark became the same gentle thing. A small fox trotted past, quick and shy, pausing to look at the light. "Only a little," Mila whispered, and lowered the lantern so the flame shone less brightly. The fox blinked once and went on. Behind him, footprints stitched a neat sentence in the sand that the tide would read in a race. When the first star appeared, it did not pierce the sky so much as settle into it. Mila lay down, pulled her cloak around her shoulders, and let the slow, even sound of the sea rock her the way a cradle rocks a child. Her last sight before sleep was the lantern's honey depth and the round, watchful moon. The road, somewhere inland, waited like a calm idea. There was no need to think of it yet. Chapter 2: Pine Road, River Path. Morning was the color of milk poured into tea. The dunes wore a soft mist, and the sea had turned a pale pewter. Mila warmed her hands on a cup of barley broth, thanked old Oleg with a nod, and stepped onto the track that led through the pines. The forest was a tall, green nave with light coming down in thin, patient shafts. Dew made the ferns glitter. A blackbird practiced a few notes and then decided that was enough for now. Mila's boots sank slightly into the path's soft sand and rose again with a quiet pull. The rhythm matched her breath, slow in, slow out. She met a cart with wooden wheels bound in iron. The driver, a woman with a scarf tied like a sail, guided her small horse with 2 fingers. Amber beads shone at her wrist. "Road's kind today," she said, and Mila agreed. The horse snorted as though it was his thought too. They walked together for a while, not wasting words. The cart creaked, the trees murmured, and there was nothing else a road needed. At a turn where the pines thinned and a river opened its silver shoulder, the woman lifted a hand and went on toward a village whose roofs lay like lids on clay jars. Mila followed the river south. The water did not rush. It practiced patience. Dragonflies hovered with impossible stillness and then darted like needles through cloth. At a wide bend, fishermen were patching nets. One called out, "Will you trade honeystones for bread?" and smiled. His bread was brown and dense, with a crust that cracked like frost. Mila gave him a small amber pebble that held a piece of grass within it, a summer pinned in gold, and he held it to the light. Satisfied, she ate slowly on the riverbank, tearing the bread in quiet pieces. A heron lifted from the reeds and made a line across the sky. Somewhere behind her, a woodpecker counted time on a hollow trunk. Near afternoon, clouds like sheep drifted low and let a lace of rain down. Mila's cloak welcomed it. The smell of pine and rain together was the kind that reminds a person she is small, and that being small is a good way to be at a ford. The river widened and grew shallow. Stones made a necklace across it. Mila tried each with her boot first, stepped when the stone said yes, and paused when it said wait. Crossing took a long time, and that was not a problem. On the far bank, she wrung the hem of her cloak gently, and hung it on a branch, while the sun, now patient again, did the rest. Evening came with an inn under oaks. Chickens murmured in their sleep. The innkeeper set a bowl of cabbage soup and a cup of warm cider in front of her and left her to eat. A dog leaned its head against her leg the way a tired child leans against a mother. She scratched its ears and listened to the soft talk of travelers who were not telling stories so much as laying their voices down like blankets. That night in a loft room, the straw smelled sweet. Through the shutters, the river moved by in a dark ribbon, and a frog practiced the same note over and over until it became a kind of lullaby. Mila blew the lantern low, then out, and the dark settled like a hand on the brauchel. Steady, kind. Chapter 3. Market Roads and Blue Tile City. For 3 days, the road braided itself with others. Traders walked in 2s and 3s. A boy led a goat with a bell that chose its notes carefully. A group of potters carried tall stacks of bowls between them like careful towers. When they stopped to drink thin beer under a willow, Mila admired the glazer, deep river blue with a line of lighter sky along each rim. The old potter nodded as if he had just been paid a compliment he could put in a pocket. By and by, houses gathered themselves into a town with a market that woke gradually from the morning like a cat stretches into sunlight. Stalls unfolded. Cloth spilled in gentle waterfalls. A woman counted plums into a woven tray, speaking each number to make it true. There was a smell like spice and smoke and a music of small coins. Acknowledging one another, Mila found a scribe's booth where a man with ink on his fingers wrote letters as if he were lifting them from the page rather than putting them down. She watched a while and then traded a thumb of amber for a small bottle of dark ink that held the scent of oak galls and iron. He examined the stone, turned it in the light, and smiled with the eyes of a person who has never been in a hurry. There was a temple with blue tiles curved like cups catching rain, and its eaves held the swallows' soft nests. Mila stood in the doorway, not going in, simply feeling the cool that belonged to such places. A priestess moved like water, carrying a basin the way the moon carries the night. Someone beat a low drum, a sound like a large heart content to be where it was, at the edge of town. The road lifted into hills with grass like silk and windmills turning slowly as though waving to a child. Sheep dotted the slopes. A shepherd nodded to Mila and returned to his flute, not playing a tune so much as giving the wind something to lean against. In a pass where cliffs kept each other company, she met a merchant train coming from the south, mules wearing bells and men wearing dust. Their leader had a cart with iron-bound wheels and a careful tarp tied the way a sailor ties a sail. He spoke of warmer valleys and flatter fields, of a city where rivers braid together and where night markets hang lamps like a second constellation. "Will you walk with us?" he asked. "I will walk beside the carts until evening," Mila said. "Then I will listen for the road again." They went together until the lamps in the city he described began to appear, first one, then two, then a dozen, then so many she stopped counting. They did not shout. They glowed. It was the glow of cooking fires and of small workshops where hands taught hands. In that light, people looked like promises kept. She slept in a courtyard under grape leaves. The grapes were not yet ripe, but the leaves made a soft roof. Somewhere nearby, a woman sang a work song that had forgotten it was a work song and had become a lullaby. Mila dreamed of rivers folding into other rivers, of letters lifting from a page like birds. Chapter 4. The Long Plain, the High Gate. When morning took its time and then arrived, the road opened into a plain that went on so far the mind could rest on it like a bench. Fields of barley nodded yes to the breeze. A line of poplars marked the canal like stitches on a seam. Oxen leaned into their yokes without complaint. Men walked beside them with the same pace as the shadow of a cloud. Mila walked with a tanner for a while. He spoke of hides and lime, of how patience is an ingredient. "If you rush," he said, "you wear the leather before you wear the shoes." She kept that line for her journal. The tanner gave her a thin strap for her pouch. She gave him a chip of amber the size of a thumbnail. They parted with a nod that meant more than a handshake. In the afternoon, the road crossed a stone bridge. That had been mended well, every repair proud of itself. On the parapet, a child had placed 3 daisies in the crack between stones, white, and a late one with petals still folded like a fist opening. Mila touched the stems gently and went on. Days slid like beads on a string. Heat gathered and then let go. A light rain made the dust settle and then rise as fragrance. At an inn called the High Gate, named for the old city wall beside it, she found a corner where travelers spoke slowly of what lay ahead. It was all the same road, yet each tongue had its own way to bless it. A scholar with a beard soft as milkweed down told her about a library in a hill town to the south, where the windows were set to the east so that the pages woke with the sun. He drew a little map on a scrap of linen and offered it to her with 2 fingers, as if it might fly away. She folded it into her journal. The hill town was cooler and smelled of time. The library was, as he had said, quiet as snowfall, light. Like a lake, shelves the color of warm bread. A keeper led Mila to a table and left her there, as if she had always belonged. She read lines about rivers that began under mountains and about cities that remember every footstep. She did not hurry. The pages did not ask her to. When she left, she took nothing from the shelves, but she carried the quiet with her. It sat in the chest the way a well sits in a courtyard, not loud, always there. On a dusk that seemed to begin inside the leaves and then spread to the sky, Mila reached a ridge where the world opened like a door. Far beyond, faint as ink thinned. With water, the silver line of the sea said there would be an ending. Between her and that end lay a last river and a city built where roads decide to stay. She slept on the ridge and dreamed of gates that were not to keep things out but to keep quiet in Chapter 5. The city of many roads. The river she had been promised was broad, sleepy, and carrying boats that did not push, only allowed themselves to be taken. Mila crossed on a ferry whose planks had learned to be kind to feet. The ferryman wore a hat woven from reeds and looked as old as the river, which is to say, as old as patience. On the far bank, the city rose not sharp, not proud, but sure. Its streets were lines drawn with a careful hand, and its squares were like held breath. Markets rolled themselves open. Fountains dreamed in stone. The smell of bread, finally, was everywhere. Mila walked to the forum, where voices made a gentle sea. A seller of glass held a vial to the light and let it fill with sky. A lamp maker set out wicks as tidy as thoughts arranged on a shelf. A woman selling dates said taste, the way a grandmother might say rest. And Mila tasted, and the date tasted like an afternoon that will never be asked to hurry. She found a bench near a column and watched. People moving not toward hurry, but toward one another. A group of students carried tablets and argued softly about whether a line should bend here or there. A child hopped from shadow to shadow and did not step on any cracks because the game asked her not to. A baker dusted loaves with flour as if he were blessing them. A soldier set his helmet down and rubbed the mark it had left on his forehead, and became for a moment simply a man with a tired brow and good hands. When the sun tilted and lanterns were lit, the city turned to honey. Mila took out her pouch of amber and set the stones on the bench one by one. People paused, not to buy, only to see. She told them the shore where she found them. She told them about the pine road, the market with blue tiles, the bridge with 3 daisies, the library that woke with the sun. She did not say these things as if she were teaching. She said them as if she were laying cards gently on a table for a friend. Later, in a small room with a window that caught the last of the light, she opened her journal and read back through what she had written. The road was there, not as a map, but as a kind of breathing long in, long out, step and step, water and wind, quiet and bread. She wrote a last line: every road is a circle. When you carry the beginning kindly to the end, night lay over the city like a blanket that knows how to tuck itself in. Somewhere a flute held a single note and let it go. The lantern threw a golden square against the wall, and then, when she lowered the wick, threw a smaller one, and finally none at all. Mila slept with the pouch of amber warm in her hand, and the city slept, too, and the river and the roads leading out, still as open books turned face down to keep their place. The journey had not ended. It had learned how to rest. If dreams have roads, they are lit by small, patient lights. And if roads dream, they dream of feet that keep them company without trying to arrive too soon.